You were 6 years old when the noise in your head stopped and the world started whispering in black and white. Before that, it was suburbia in slow motion, pumpkins on porches, the smell of leaves set on fire, an older sister who hummed songs you never really heard. Your parents were ghosts with mortgages. You were the quiet one. Family photos proved it. In every snapshot, the others smiled, and you stood still, eyes like unlit candles. They thought silence meant gentleness. They were wrong. Inside, you didn't hear laughter or scolding or the television. You heard the house breathing. You heard the blade drawers calling your name in a language only metal understands. And on that one October night, the whisper turned into an order. It wasn't rage. It wasn't jealousy. It was clarity. You put on the mask first, not to hide, but to be seen. Plastic against skin, everything muffled. The world shrunk to the oval of your vision, and through that hole you saw the truth. Whatever love used to mean, it drowned in the quiet a long time ago. Your feet knew the route to her room. The creak of every step was a verse in a song only you could dance to. When the knife fell, the world became a single note, sharp and clean. Afterwards, you felt neither guilt nor triumph, only the sudden emptiness that follows applause no one gave. They said you didn't speak again. They thought that was the tragedy. It wasn't. The tragedy was how peaceful it felt. The police lights painting your face red and blue like a warped bedtime story. A small boy, a shiny blade, a calm heartbeat. You didn't resist, you didn't cry. You looked at them the way you looked at everything, like you were already somewhere else. The streets of Haddonfield forgot that night as fast as they could. They mowed their lawns and washed their cars, and when Halloween came back, they put masks on their kids again, pretending masks were harmless. But the city remembered you in its bones. The wind through the trees carried your name in pieces. Myers, Michael, Mist. They called you a monster before they even closed the case file. But monsters are born screaming, clawing for air. You were the opposite, quiet, deliberate, surgical. Like a surgeon who only removes hope. The doctors couldn't decide if you were sick or sacred, so they shackled you, studied you, wrote essays that rotted in filing cabinets. At night, when they left the lights low, you'd listen to them arguing through the hallway glass. He's just a boy. No, he's something else, something hollow. They were both right. You were a boy once, then the world blinked, and you became a silence wrapped in skin. Years later, when the headlines called you the Shape, you'd barely remember this part. The smell of latex on your cheeks, the red spatter across a white wall. But deep down, the child inside your chest would still be standing right here, 6 years old, staring through that mask, waiting for someone to tell him it's okay to stop. No one ever did. And so the quiet stayed. It grew teeth. It learned to walk again.
Every monster has an origin story. Yours began when the world went still enough for you to finally hear yourself breathe.
You traded the neighborhood's whispers for the hum of fluorescent lights. They called it an institution, but it was really a mausoleum for the living. Inside, time didn't move, it throbbed like a headache you couldn't cure. White walls, cleaner than truth. Nurses in soft shoes, whispering about your stare. Orderlies who smiled too wide, convinced kindness could thaw stone. You sat still and let them talk. They said you were sick, they said you could be fixed. But every therapy session ended the same way. A man in a chair, a boy staring through him. They tried questions, then hypnosis, then drugs that made the world blur into watercolor. None of it mattered. You had already seen the inside of humanity. You had no reason to step back into it. Dr. Loomis came next. He wasn't afraid, at least not in the beginning. He looked at you like you were an eclipse, terrifying but impossible to look away from. He called you pure evil. You didn't argue, you didn't even blink. What he didn't understand was that evil requires intention. You had none. You were momentum given flesh. The days bled into years. They measured your growth in inches and silence. Nurses retired, walls cracked and were painted again. Outside, the world learned to forget you, one Halloween at a time. Inside, you learned to breathe in measured counts. Every inhale an inventory of restraint, every exhale a reminder of what waited behind the mask locked in evidence storage. Sometimes they'd play music over the intercom. Jazz, cheery pop songs, things meant to make the staff feel alive. You listened, memorized the rhythms, studied the patterns. It wasn't the melody that moved you, it was the regularity, order, predictability, things human hearts never mastered. At night, when the guards swapped shifts, you'd feel the pressure change. Somewhere between footsteps and fluorescent flickers, you could almost hear Haddonfield again. The rustle of branches, the faint thud of your own footsteps on pavement. You could smell the cold October air, sharp with decay and nostalgia. Time had a taste. It called you home. Then there was that one storm, the kind that makes electricity second-guess itself, the kind that erases boundaries between sky and earth. The thunder cracked, and for a half-second the emergency lights failed. Doors that hadn't moved in 15 years sighed open just enough. You didn't plan it. Plans of a people. You moved. No one saw you go, but they felt it. Every room colder, every hallway stretched thinner. Loomis was the first to know, that animal instinct, the one that wakes you before disaster strikes, dragged him from sleep. He knew the silence had escaped. Outside, the rain soaked your paper gown instantly. You didn't shiver. The cold was nothing compared to what you'd carried all these years. Somewhere behind you, alarms began to shriek. Ahead of you, darkness waited, patient, familiar, almost tender. You walked toward it, step by deliberate step, bare feet painting the asphalt with pale footprints. Freedom didn't feel triumphant. It felt inevitable. You found a car by instinct more than thought. Keys left in the ignition, radio dead. The engine coughed and came to life. The headlights cut 2 white wounds into the night.
And in their reflection, you weren't a man anymore. You were a rumor with pulse. The shape had returned. The road stretched out like a confession you'd never speak. Every mile a heartbeat. Every raindrop drumming the same world against the windshield. Home. Somewhere Haddonfield slept under the illusion of safety. They'd forgotten your mask, your name, your soundless promise to return. But memory never dies. It just waits for Halloween. And so, with the storm at your back and the night pulling you forward, you drove into the dark. The boy was gone. The patient was gone. What was left didn't need names or reasons or mercy. Only purpose, only silence, and the faint echo of a town that hadn't bled enough.
You come home to Haddonfield, like a storm walking on two legs. The air greets you first, crisp, metallic, tasting faintly of memory and police tape. Houses look the same, though newer paint hides older blood. Kids parade down streets dressed like monsters, never realizing one of them finally showed up for real. You move through them like a rumor in the wind, always walking, never running. Predators sprint, inevitability strolls. Every step folds time back to that first Halloween, when you discovered silence could hum louder than screams. They call it your killing spree, a phrase too small for the ritual it's become. It isn't rage or vengeance, it's repetition, a rhythm older than conscience. You swing, you slash, you stop. They fall, you keep going. The pattern comforts you. A hymn in minor key, played on lungs and terror. Each year the town forgets, until pumpkins bloom on porches and the moon sets the streets ablaze in silver. Then the music starts over. You don't choreograph it, but something inside you marks tempo. Heartbeat, heartbeat, scream, heartbeat. They call you supernatural, but you know the truth. You're just consistent, death's metronome in boots and mask. The bullets stopped hurting years ago. Fire doesn't stay long enough to matter. They always think it's the end. New sheriff, new movie, same funeral march. But you've become part of this place's architecture now. The town breathes you in October and exhales your legend by November. You vanish, they rebuild, you return. It keeps everybody honest. Under the mask, silence keeps score. You remember their faces, every one of them, but not their names. Names are noise, faces are timestamps. Each one marks another chapter in your endless loop. You'd pity them if you remembered what pity felt like. Instead, you feel the faint satisfaction of a craftsman sharpening his tools. Loomis hunted you. Others tried. They called it justice. You called it intermission. Always the same ending. Sirens, firelight. the town pretending victory while you slip back into myth. In the asylum, they studied your pulse. In the grave, they'll study your absence. The joke's on everyone. The shape needs no heartbeat to keep moving.
You've walked through decades now. 70s corduroy, 80s neon, 90s irony, streaming age dread. Generations change their slang, but fear never updates. Teenagers still open the wrong doors. Lovers still split up to cover more ground. Humanity never patches the bug that lets you in. Sometimes, between screams, something like boredom creeps in. You find yourself pausing before a window, watching a family dinner through the glass. Soft laughter, hands passing plates. Not envy, not longing, just recognition. Another life humming a tune you once knew the words to. You stay until they sense it, that static charge of wrongness. Then you fade back into the night. That's as close as you come to conversation. Halloween ends. Dawn scrubs the color from the town, and your shadow dissolves behind fences and morning news anchors. They count bodies, shake heads, and promise vigilance. They never look up long enough to see you watching from the edge of the woods, patient as rust. Because for you, it never ends. The calendar turns, the cycle resets. The knife gleams again under a different moon. The band tunes up for the same old song. You are the refrain the world can't forget, playing the same note until eternity gets tired of listening. They'll call it chaos, you call it order. They'll call it horror, you call it home. And when the next October wind cuts through Haddonfield, every leaf will whisper the melody you wrote in blood. A slow waltz for the doomed, played by the shape, conducted by silence. Dawn always feels like an interrogation lamp, too bright, too honest. It's the part you hate most. The night accepts you, daylight cross-examines. It spills down Haddonfield streets, crawling over every broken fence and uncollected candy wrapper, looking for what's left of the fight. But you've already slipped away, leaving only absence to take the blame. Somewhere in town they start the explanations, motive charts, psychological theories, headlines about evil incarnate. The words fill the air, trying to rename what they fear. But definitions are just cages with better paint. You've broken too many of those to bother with another. You wait out the sun in places built for forgetting, abandoned houses, underground rooms, any corner where time can't find you. Hours stretch thin, and silence gets heavy enough to touch. That's when the mask becomes more than disguise. It turns into a border. Flesh on one side, legend on the other. And the longer you wear it, the smaller that border feels. Somewhere along the years, you stopped being a man in a mask and became a mask wearing a man. You remember flashes, not moments, blood-colored leaves, the hiss of rain against metal, the way fear smells right before it screams. But real memories, the kind with sunlight and warmth, those rotted away long ago. You try to imagine the boy who stood in a hallway with a kitchen knife and a heartbeat. Nothing. The picture's gone, just the frame remains. Loomis used to beg the question, why you? He believed in cause. You believe in consequence. Maybe you were born wrong, maybe shaped by silence, maybe just chosen by the night. Doesn't matter anymore. Every carnival of horror needs its ringmaster. You just happened to fit the mask. Outside the wind picks up. Autumn again carried back around. You can feel Halloween approaching, not on calendars, but in bones. The world thinks it's a holiday. For you, it's gravity. One by one, the lights will dim, the kids will don plastic fangs, and the city will tune itself to the same dark frequency you've been hearing all your life.
You step out when the sky starts bleeding orange. The streets shimmer wet, reflecting crimson like the world half remembering its sins. You walk through it unseen, the way an old sin moves through memory. People talk about confronting their demons. You've learned to be theirs. Some nights you wonder if the killings are prayers in disguise, each one a plea for release you know will never come. The irony, of course, is that they call you death when what you're really chasing is peace. You trade the legend for 1 hour of silence that doesn't echo. But legends don't negotiate. They consume. Up ahead, another house glows behind curtains. A child presses a plastic mask to their face, breathing the same fog you once did. You watch for a long moment until the parent pulls them inside. The door closes, the porch light dies, and something, tiny, tired, slips further away inside you. You turn back to the road. Rain starts again, thick and rhythmic, washing red into silver. It hides the footprints, spares the story from witnesses. Somewhere behind, the city exhales and calls itself safe. But you know better. Monsters don't disappear, they rest. You keep walking. The mask catches the light once, then vanishes in the dark. No destination, no plan, just the same pulse that started decades ago. In the distance, a bell tolls, slow, counting down to midnight. The detective was right about one thing. Pure evil isn't loud, it's patient. And as the next Halloween waits beyond the horizon, you fade into its promise like a shadow clock resetting itself. Because the night always comes back, because the shape never sleeps, because silence still needs someone to wear its face. The rain finally stops, though the night keeps breathing. Somewhere a siren groans, tired, repetitive, like the world practicing grief. You pause for a moment, listening, not to the sound, but to the emptiness between the notes. It's familiar, it's home. If stories are meant to teach, yours never learned how to end. You were made in silence, fed by fear, kept alive by memory. And every time they forget, you're reborn, the ghost of their own neglect made flesh again. The city will sleep, the headlines will fade, and the mask will wait. Because evil never dies, it just clocks in early.